In the year 1595, the land we now call Germany was not one nation, but a fractured empire of fear, ambition, and blood. Kingdoms fought not for freedom, but for survival. The air trembled with whispers of rebellion, religion, and revenge. From the burning cities of the 30 Years' War to the birth of a unified empire, Germany's story is one of power, pain, and transformation. This is not just history. It is the tale of a people who rose from chaos to shape the world. If you love your country, subscribe and comment below. In the year 1595, the land we now know as Germany was not a single country. It was a tangled web of kingdoms, duchies, and free cities scattered across the Holy Roman Empire. Each region had its own ruler, its own soldiers, its own ambitions. To outsiders, it looked like a patchwork of colors on a map. But beneath that map burned a storm. Religion, rivalry, and rebellion were tearing the German lands apart. The Holy Roman Empire, once meant to unite the Christian world, had become a political maze. Catholic princes followed the Pope, while Protestant leaders turned their eyes toward freedom, and often toward war. The tension between these two faiths grew like a fire waiting for the wind. That wind came in 1618 when the 30 Years' War began, a war that would scar the soul of Germany forever. For 3 decades, German soil became a graveyard of nations. Villages were burned, cities starved, and millions died. The war wasn't just about religion, it was about power. France, Spain, Sweden, and Austria all fought to control the empire's heart. Armies marched through German towns like locusts, leaving nothing but ashes behind. By the time the war ended in 1648, the Peace of Westphalia had redrawn Europe, but Germany was shattered. Its population had been cut in half. Its cities lay in ruins. The once proud Holy Roman Empire was now a ghost of its former self. But history does not end in destruction. It begins there. Out of the ruins, a new idea started to grow: German identity. For the first time, poets, philosophers, and scholars began asking, what does it mean to be German? From the ashes of war came thinkers like Leibniz and Leopold I, who dreamed of unity and progress. Yet, unity was still centuries away. As the 1700s dawned, one state began to rise above the rest: Prussia. Under the rule of the Hohenzollerns, Prussia became a military machine. While other kingdoms danced in palaces, Prussia trained in barracks. Frederick William, known as the Soldier King, built a disciplined army that Europe feared. And his son, Frederick the Great, turned that army into a legend. He fought wars not just for territory, but for prestige. The 7 Years' War, 1756-1763, proved that Prussia could stand against empires twice its size. In those years, the dream of a united, powerful German state began to take form, not through words, but through steel. While Prussia forged power, the rest of Germany changed in silence. The Enlightenment swept through Europe, and German thinkers like Kant, Goethe, and Schiller reshaped art, science, and philosophy. They gave the world ideas that would echo through centuries. Yet politically, Germany remained divided. More than 300 states, each jealous of its own pride. But under the surface, something invisible was happening. A shared culture, a shared language, a shared longing for nationhood was taking root. Then came the Napoleonic Wars. In 1806, Napoleon crushed the Holy Roman Empire and declared it dead. German princes bowed to France, and for the first time in 1,000 years, there was no emperor. But in the darkness of occupation, a spark was born. Secret societies, poets, and students began whispering the forbidden dream: Ein Volk, ein Vaterland. One people, one fatherland. Napoleon unintentionally created what centuries of emperors could not: the sense that Germans belonged to one destiny. After Napoleon's fall in 1815, the Congress of Vienna redrew Europe's borders, creating the German Confederation, a loose alliance of 39 states. But it was a fragile peace. Austria wanted control, Prussia wanted power, and the people wanted freedom. Revolutions erupted in 1848. as citizens demanded democracy and unity. Barricades rose in Berlin, Frankfurt, and Vienna. Though the revolts were crushed, the idea of a united Germany refused to die. And then came a man who would make that dream real, Otto von Bismarck. Known as the Iron Chancellor, Bismarck was not a dreamer. He was a realist, a master strategist who believed that nations were forged not by speeches, but by blood and iron. Between 1864 and 1871, he orchestrated 3 wars: the Danish War, the Austro-Prussian War, and the Franco-Prussian War. Each victory tightened Prussia's grip over the German states. And in 1871, inside the Palace of Versailles, Bismarck stood beside Kaiser Wilhelm I as the German Empire was proclaimed. At last, after centuries of chaos, Germany was won. The new empire rose with terrifying speed. Its factories roared, its scientists innovated, its culture flourished. Germany became an industrial powerhouse and a military giant. But beneath the triumph lay tension. Between the monarchy and the people, the workers and the elites, the liberals and the conservatives, the seeds of future turmoil were already being planted. By the dawn of the 20th century, Germany stood tall among the world's great powers, but ambition has a price. The alliances of Europe were tangled, and pride was a loaded gun. In 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand lit the fuse. World War I began, and Germany found itself at the heart of destruction once again. Millions marched to the front believing in glory, but came home to ruin. In 1918, Germany surrendered. The Treaty of Versailles stripped the nation of land, pride, and hope. The empire was gone, and the Weimar Republic was born, a fragile democracy built on humiliation. The years that followed were dark. Inflation devoured savings, poverty haunted cities, and anger filled the streets. Out of that anger rose a voice that promised revenge and rebirth: Adolf Hitler. By 1933, the Nazi Party had seized power, and Germany entered its darkest chapter. Freedom vanished, books burned, and the world watched as the country spiraled toward war again. World War II began in 1939, and once more, German ambition reshaped the world. The Nazi regime unleashed horror on an unimaginable scale: the Holocaust, the bombings, the death of millions. By 1945, the dream of dominance ended in ashes. Hitler was dead, Berlin lay in ruins, and Germany was divided by the victors into East and West. The Iron Curtain fell, and 2 Germanys were born, one under Soviet control, the other under the West. Yet history had one final twist to give. Despite division, the German spirit of resilience endured. West Germany rose as a democracy, rebuilding from nothing into one of the strongest economies in the world. East Germany lived under communism's shadow, but its people never stopped dreaming of freedom. And then, in 1989, that dream broke the wall itself. The Berlin Wall, a symbol of division, was torn down by the hands of ordinary Germans. Tears and cheers filled the air. The world watched as East and West Germany reunited in 1990, and a new chapter began. From the ashes of empires, wars, and revolutions, Germany emerged not as a conqueror, but as a teacher, a nation that learned from its past. Today it stands as a beacon of progress, democracy, and remembrance. The story of Germany is not one of perfection, but of transformation. How a fractured land born in blood found unity, purpose, and redemption. From centuries of chaos to unity and rebirth, Germany's journey changed the world forever. But what truly defines a nation's soul? Subscribe now and join the discovery. Imagine standing in the heart of Europe, where rivers like the Rhine and the Elbe flow through lands that have seen kingdoms rise and crumble. The air of Germany carries whispers, echoes of knights, kings, poets, and revolutionaries. This is not just a nation's history. It is the story of an idea forged in war, faith, and rebirth. In the year 1595, the German lands were a chessboard of power. More than 300 rulers, princes, bishops, and dukes, controlled fragments of a vast empire that called itself Holy, Roman, and Germanic. But in truth, it was anything but united. It was a fragile network of alliances held together by religion and fear. The people lived under constant tension, a thin line between faith and fire. Catholic and Protestant beliefs collided, not just in words, but in blood. The seeds of conflict that would ignite the 30 Years' War were already planted, waiting for a spark. And when that war began in 1618, it did not simply change Germany, it consumed it. For 30 long years, the land bled. Armies from Sweden, France, Spain, and Austria turned German soil into a battlefield of faith and survival. Cities like Magdeburg were wiped from existence, villages starved, fathers were lost, children grew up in ruins. When the smoke cleared in 1648, what remained of the Holy Roman Empire was a broken mosaic. But deep within that brokenness, something new was born. The awareness that Germans, despite their divisions, shared one fate. That realization, fragile and invisible, would become the foundation of a nation centuries later. As peace returned, so did ambition. The German principalities rebuilt, and among them one began to shine brighter: Prussia. While other rulers built palaces, Prussia built soldiers. Its kings ruled not from luxury, but from discipline. In the 18th century, Frederick the Great carved his legend across Europe. He was more than a warrior. He was a philosopher king who blended strategy with art. Under his rule, Prussia became the heart of a new German power, a symbol of efficiency, strength, and identity. But power came at a cost. The rest of Germany remained divided. While thinkers like Goethe, Schiller, and Kant gave birth to ideas that would shape humanity itself, from literature to philosophy, their homeland remained politically fragmented. The Holy Roman Empire, once majestic, had become irrelevant. Then came Napoleon Bonaparte, a man whose ambition burned brighter than empires. In 1806, Napoleon destroyed the Holy Roman Empire with a single declaration. The German princes bent the knee, and for the first time in nearly 1,000 years, there was no emperor. Yet Napoleon's conquest did something extraordinary. It awakened a sleeping giant. The humiliation, the occupation, the burning desire for unity, all began to flow together. Students and poets formed secret societies whispering the forbidden words, Ein Volk, ein Vaterland, one people, one fatherland. Those whispers grew louder with every passing year. After Napoleon's defeat, Europe tried to restore its old order. The Congress of Vienna, 1815, created the German Confederation, a loose alliance of 39 states meant to preserve peace. But peace without unity is just silence before the storm. The people wanted democracy, freedom, and a single flag. When the revolutions of 1848 erupted, German cities rose in hope. But the old powers struck back, crushing the dream. Yet even as the flames were extinguished, the idea refused to die. And then came Otto von Bismarck, the man who would turn dreams into destiny. Cold, brilliant, and calculating, Bismarck understood one truth. The great questions of the day will not be decided by speeches and majority decisions, but by iron and blood. Between 1864 and 1871, he led Prussia through 3 calculated wars, each one designed to eliminate a rival and unite the German states under one banner. And so, in 1871, inside the glittering Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, the same place where France once ruled supreme, the German Empire was born. Kaiser Wilhelm I was crowned, and for the first time in history, Germany stood united. A new power had entered the world stage. Factories roared, railways stretched across the land, and cities like Berlin and Munich became centers of innovation and art. The empire rose like lightning, proud, industrial, unstoppable. But history is never kind to arrogance. Beneath the success, cracks were forming. Between rich and poor, monarchs and workers, old and new. By the dawn of the 20th century, Germany's ambitions had grown beyond its borders. The desire to dominate Europe, to carve an empire overseas, pushed it into the deadly web of alliances that led to World War I. When that war came in 1914, millions of Germans marched believing in honor and destiny. but returned to find only loss and despair. The empire collapsed, the Kaiser fled, and a fragile republic was born. The Weimar Republic promised democracy but delivered chaos. Inflation destroyed savings overnight. Hunger filled the streets. People who once marched proudly now stood in breadlines. And from that despair rose a man who promised glory: Adolf Hitler. What followed was not glory, but darkness. Under Hitler, Germany became a machine of terror. The world watched as books were burned, neighbors vanished, and an ideology of hate consumed a generation. The Second World War unleashed destruction beyond imagination. When it ended in 1945, Germany lay in ashes once again, divided by barbed wire, watched by foreign armies, haunted by guilt. But even then, the German story refused to end. The West rebuilt, turning democracy into discipline, innovation into purpose. The East endured oppression, waiting for the day the wall would fall. And on November 9, 1989, it did. The people tore down the Berlin Wall, not with weapons, but with hope. Families reunited, songs filled the night, and the impossible dream became real. Germany was one again. From the ruins of war to the towers of progress, Germany's history is not a story of perfection. It's a story of transformation, of how a people faced their darkest truths, rebuilt from the ashes, and rose to lead with knowledge, not conquest. Today, Germany stands as one of the world's most powerful democracies, a nation that remembers its past yet refuses to be chained by it. Its journey teaches us something eternal, that unity born from struggle is stronger than unity born from comfort. Because in the end, the true power of Germany was never in its armies or empires. It was in its ability to rebuild its soul again and again from the ruins of its own making. In 1871, Germany stood reborn, a new empire forged from the fires of centuries-long wars and fragmented duchies. The people cheered as Otto von Bismarck declared the German Empire inside the glittering Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. But behind that triumphant echo, a darker whisper began, a mystery of ambition, pride, and destiny. Germany's unification wasn't born out of peace. It was a creation built on cunning diplomacy and ruthless manipulation. Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, had woven alliances and wars like threads in a dangerous web. He once said, "The great questions of the day will not be settled by speeches and majority decisions, but by blood and iron." His empire was strong but fragile, like a sword balanced on its own edge. As the 19th century faded, Germany's power grew like wildfire. Industrial might, military discipline, and a thirst for respect drove it forward. Yet under this pride, something deeper brewed, a restlessness. The empire wanted recognition not just as a power, but the power. The world began to sense it. Germany's rise was not peaceful, it was inevitable. Europe stood uneasy. France burned with revenge after losing Alsace-Lorraine. Britain watched suspiciously as German factories and shipyards expanded. Russia waited, uncertain whether Germany would be a friend or a future rival. In the heart of Europe, Bismarck's brilliant web of diplomacy began to unravel after his resignation in 1890. Without his steady hand, alliances shifted like shadows in fog. Kaiser Wilhelm II, young, proud, and unpredictable, took command. He admired his empire's might but despised sharing control. His hunger for glory blinded him. He dismissed Bismarck, saying, "I will rule the empire myself." The world trembled as he began to chase power not through caution, but through provocation. Germany's new course was bold, a navy to rival Britain's, colonies to challenge France's, and technology that outpaced all others. But these ambitions carried a heavy cost. The alliances once meant to preserve peace became traps. Every nation armed itself for a war it hoped would never come. Yet destiny had already drawn the line. In 1914, a single gunshot in Sarajevo shattered the illusion of peace. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was dead, and like falling dominoes, Europe's powers collapsed into war. Germany found itself at the center of a storm of its own making. The Great War, the war to end all wars, had begun. At first, the empire seemed unstoppable. German troops marched with precision, conquering lands in days. Their confidence was unmatched, their discipline terrifying. Yet, the further they advanced, the darker the mystery grew. Soldiers vanished into the mud of the trenches. Gas choked the air. Millions died in silence under a sky painted red by fire and steel. Inside Germany, whispers began. Whispers of starvation, exhaustion, betrayal. Civilians lined up for bread. Mothers wept as sons never returned. And in the war rooms, generals argued over pride while the nation bled. The same iron that had built the empire was now rusting in the trenches of France. By 1918, the mighty German Empire crumbled. The Kaiser fled. The proud soldiers returned home not as heroes but as ghosts. The Treaty of Versailles branded Germany a villain, forced to pay, kneel, and remember. But humiliation only planted new seeds. Seeds of revenge, waiting for the right darkness to grow. The 1920s brought confusion, a republic born from ruins. The Weimar Republic promised democracy, yet it stood on broken legs. The people wanted hope but found chaos. Inflation devoured their savings, unemployment shattered their pride. Bread cost millions. Children played with worthless paper money. In smoky bars and ruined streets, one name began to rise, whispered first, then shouted louder and louder. Adolf Hitler. Who was this man? A soldier from the Great War, a failed artist, a voice of rage. He told the people what they wanted to hear, that Germany's fall wasn't their fault, but the fault of traitors, enemies, and outsiders. His words were poison, sweet, and deadly. In beer halls, he transformed grief into fury, shame into nationalism. The mystery of Germany deepened again. How could a cultured, intelligent nation fall under such darkness? Yet as history often does, it followed emotion over reason. The people wanted a savior, and he offered them one, a vision of greatness reborn. By 1933, the world watched as democracy vanished quietly. Hitler became chancellor. Books burned, voices disappeared. The swastika rose over Berlin. A new empire, the Third Reich, was born from fear and fury. The world sensed the storm again, but it was already too late. Germany had entered another era of obsession, the pursuit of perfection, power, and purity. Its mystery was no longer about ambition, but control, of thought, of people, of history itself. While the rest of the world saw progress, Germany saw destiny. The shadow that began in Versailles had grown into a darkness that consumed Europe once again. The mystery wasn't just political, it was human. How could millions believe in destruction as salvation? How could culture and cruelty coexist? How could an empire rise, fall, and rise again within a single lifetime? The answers lay buried in that same unyielding German soul, disciplined, proud, yet forever haunted by the ghosts of its own making. By the eve of World War II, the world understood the truth. Germany's history wasn't just a timeline. It was a question, a riddle of ambition, tragedy, and rebirth. And this mystery was only the beginning. The year was 1933. Germany stood tall again, not through peace but through fear. Adolf Hitler's rise had electrified a broken nation. Flags flew high, and the air was filled with chants of unity and power. Yet beneath the marching boots and glowing torches, something sinister stirred, suspicion. Neighbors began to watch neighbors. Words once harmless could now condemn. Teachers, friends, even family members. Anyone could become the enemy overnight. The Gestapo's shadow stretched into every home, every heart. People learned to whisper, not speak. Germany's rebirth had come at a price. Silence. Hitler promised strength, order, and pride. For a nation humiliated by Versailles, it was irresistible. The factories roared again, the army grew strong, and the economy thrived. But deep down, a sense of dread grew stronger. The price of power was freedom. Suspicion turned inward first. The regime hunted enemies of the state, communists, journalists, intellectuals, Jews. Each night, footsteps echoed down the streets as black cars arrived quietly. People disappeared, leaving only questions behind. A nation that once valued philosophy and art had now become obsessed with loyalty and obedience. Even Hitler's closest circle lived under the same cloud of fear. Within the Nazi Party, betrayal was an art. Ambitious men like Himmler, Goebbels, and Goering whispered in the Führer's ear, each plotting to secure his favor while secretly distrusting the others. Suspicion wasn't a symptom, it was a system. Hitler understood one thing: a divided mind is easier to control. He created enemies where none existed: Jews, political dissidents, intellectuals, foreign powers, anyone who could unite against him. Propaganda became Germany's new gospel. Radios broadcast his voice daily, declaring who to hate, who to blame, and who to trust. Children learned songs glorifying war. Posters painted Jews as demons. Newspapers praised the Führer as a god. Germany was hypnotized, a nation under a spell woven from suspicion and lies. Outside its borders, the world watched uneasily. Britain and France feared another war but did not believe it possible. He only wants peace, some said. He just wants to restore his country. But in secret, Germany was building something far more dangerous. Not just armies, but ideology. In 1936, the world's suspicion grew as German troops marched into the demilitarized Rhineland, a direct violation of the Versailles Treaty. Yet no one stopped them. The silence of Europe emboldened Hitler. He smiled. The world's hesitation was his greatest weapon. By 1938, his ambitions grew bolder. Austria was swallowed in a peaceful annexation, the Anschluss. The streets filled with cheering crowds, but in the shadows, Jewish families packed what little they could carry. Friends turned away, pretending not to see. The same suspicion that kept Germans silent now spread across borders. Who could stop a man who could make millions believe in his cause? In Munich that same year, world leaders met to discuss peace. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned home declaring, "Peace for our time." But that peace was built on illusion. The world had underestimated Hitler's hunger. Suspicion wasn't only between nations now, it lived inside every heart. The Pope questioned Germany's soul. The Soviet Union prepared for betrayal. America watched from afar, unsure whether to intervene. Inside Germany, suspicion consumed truth itself. Historians were silenced, scientists forced to obey, churches infiltrated. Every corner of life bent beneath the weight of ideology. Even those who opposed Hitler, brave souls like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and members of the White Rose Resistance, lived knowing death could come with a single whisper. Yet amid the darkness, small acts of defiance flickered like candles. Secret letters, hidden prayers, quiet refusals. Not everyone believed the lies, but few dared to speak. By 1939, suspicion turned outward. Hitler's speeches grew louder, his vision clearer. Germany must expand, and for living space and for destiny, for revenge. When he invaded Poland on September 1st, the illusion finally shattered. Europe's worst suspicions were confirmed. The world woke up to a nightmare, and Germany stood once again at the center of it. Suspicion had done its work. It had blinded reason, silenced dissent, and divided humanity. Now that suspicion would ignite the most devastating war the world had ever known. The German people, once proud philosophers, engineers, and poets, were trapped in a system that punished thought and rewarded obedience. And as bombs began to fall, the same question haunted every mind. How did it come to this? How could an entire nation lose itself in its own fear? The answers would unfold in blood, fire, and silence. The world exploded on September 1st, 1939. At dawn, German troops stormed across the Polish border under the deafening roar of artillery. The Blitzkrieg, lightning war, had begun. It was fast, merciless, and precise. Tanks thundered through villages, planes screamed overhead, and within weeks Poland fell. Europe watched in horror as Germany's war machine rolled forward. Unstoppable, Hitler's voice echoed through the radio. "We will build a new world order or we will die trying." And the people cheered, still believing the dream, still blind to the nightmare ahead. By 1940, France collapsed like a house of cards. Paris, the city of light, stood in darkness under the shadow of the swastika. The German army seemed invincible, Nations fell one by one: Norway, Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands. Britain alone stood defiant, its skies filled with fire as the Luftwaffe launched wave after wave of bombers. But something was changing. Behind the victories, a darker reality spread, one that no propaganda could hide forever. In occupied territories, people vanished. Jews were rounded up, herded into ghettos, stripped of names, rights, and hope. The Nazi dream revealed its true face, not of unity, but of extermination. Trains rumbled eastward, packed with terrified families. They thought they were being relocated. Instead, they were sent to death. In hidden forests and barbed wire camps, humanity itself was being murdered. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, names that would forever haunt the earth. Smoke rose day and night from chimneys, carrying the ashes of millions. The Holocaust wasn't a secret, it was a machine. A systematic slaughter disguised as order, justified as purity. Back in Berlin, the Führer smiled before cheering crowds, but inside his mind, paranoia grew. He trusted no one, not his generals, not his allies, not even his own people. The same suspicion that had once built his empire now began to devour it. By 1941, Hitler made his most fatal move, Operation Barbarossa. He invaded the Soviet Union, breaking a non-aggression pact he himself had signed. It was the largest invasion in human history. 3 million German soldiers marching east, believing victory was destiny. At first, it seemed unstoppable. Soviet defenses crumbled, cities burned, millions died. But then came the Russian winter, brutal, merciless, unforgiving. Tanks froze in the snow, soldiers starved, frostbitten and desperate. Germany's arrogance had led it into a trap. The Red Army fought back with rage born of survival. Stalingrad became the turning point, a city reduced to rubble but unbroken. For months, Germans and Soviets fought house to house, street to street. Entire divisions vanished in the cold. When the last German surrendered, 300,000 men were dead or captured. The invincible Wehrmacht had met its match. In 1943, the Allied forces began to strike back. British and American bombers rained destruction over German cities. Hamburg burned for days. Dresden became a sea of fire. Civilians ran through the streets as buildings melted under the flames. Still, Hitler refused to surrender. His speeches turned into rants of desperation. He spoke of miracle weapons, of final victories that never came. Inside his bunker, he surrounded himself with maps, fantasies, and silence. The war had turned against him. Italy fell. France was liberated. The Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, D-Day. It was the beginning of the end. German defenses crumbled as millions of Allied soldiers pushed toward Berlin. As the walls closed in, Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich was dying in less than 12. By early 1945, Berlin was a graveyard. Soviet artillery thundered across the city. Civilians hid in basements as the earth shook. Once proud soldiers fought hopelessly in the ruins. The empire that had sought to rule the world was now reduced to ashes. Inside a dim bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, Adolf Hitler sat pale, trembling, and defeated. The man who had terrified nations now feared the sound of his own footsteps. Reports came in. The Soviets were only streets away. On April 30th, 1945, with the Red Army closing in, Hitler ended his own life. Outside, the German capital burned. Flags that once symbolized power now lay in the dirt. When the smoke cleared, the world saw what remained. A land divided, broken, and haunted. More than 70 million lives were lost in the war. 6 million Jews were murdered. Entire cities erased. Families shattered beyond repair. The master race had destroyed itself. Germany, the heart of European philosophy, science, and music, lay in ruins. Children wandered among the rubble searching for food. Mothers cried for sons who would never return. The silence that followed the war was heavier than the explosions that came before. But amid the ashes, something remarkable began. For the first time, Germany faced itself. The survivors looked back not with pride but with horror. They asked questions no one had dared ask before. How did we let this happen? How could we follow such madness? The Nuremberg trials answered with justice. The world saw the faces of those who had ordered the crimes, heard their excuses, and condemned them before history. As the world rebuilt, Germany was split, east and west. A wall of ideology divided its soul, one half under Soviet control, the other under Western freedom. The Cold War began, and with it, a new kind of tension, not of armies, but of secrets. Yet even in this division, the German people began to rebuild. From rubble came rebirth. Cities rose again, streets filled with laughter, and art returned. But deep down, the memory of what had been done and what had been lost never faded. The climax of Germany's story wasn't just destruction, it was revelation. A nation that once sought to rule the world had learned the hardest lesson of all, that power without humanity leads only to ruin. The echoes of those years still linger today, in memorials, in museums, in silence. Every brick rebuilt after the war carries a whisper, never again. The war had ended, but peace did not arrive gently. In 1945, Germany was a scar across the heart of Europe, a nation shattered not only in stone and steel, but in spirit. Entire cities lay in ruins. Smoke still drifted above the rubble. Millions were homeless, starving, and lost. The proud empire that once dreamed of ruling the world now stood divided, humiliated, and occupied by foreign powers. The world looked at Germany not with fear anymore, but with pity, disgust, and suspicion. For the German people, it was not just a defeat, it was an awakening. In the silence after the bombs, the people began to rebuild, not their walls first, but their conscience. For the first time in generations, Germany faced its reflection in the broken glass. The crimes, the lies, the horrors, all could no longer be hidden. The Nuremberg trials became a mirror to the world. The names of the architects of death were read aloud: Göring, Himmler, Hess. The courtroom echoed with the evidence of unimaginable cruelty: films, testimonies, photographs. The world saw what Germany had done, and Germany was forced to see it too. But something changed there, something powerful. The new generation didn't turn away. They didn't deny it. They learned. Teachers taught about Auschwitz, not as propaganda, but as truth. Filmmakers showed the pain of the past through raw, honest art. Survivors told their stories not for vengeance, but for remembrance. The phrase "Nie wieder," never again, became the soul of the new Germany. Yet the scars ran deep. After the war, the country was split in two, east and west, a physical and ideological wound that divided families, dreams, and hopes. In the West, under American and British guidance, the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, was born. It embraced democracy, capitalism, and freedom. Cities like Frankfurt and Munich rose again, filled with optimism and industry. In the East, under Soviet control, the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, took a different path: communism, censorship, and control. Life there was slower, heavier, quieter, a life under watchful eyes. And between them, a wall, concrete, barbed wire, and fear, split Berlin in two. The Berlin Wall became more than a border. It was a scar across humanity itself. Families waved to each other across checkpoints. Lovers were separated. Children grew up never knowing their relatives on the other side. Guards stood ready to shoot anyone who dared to climb to freedom. But even in the darkest years of division, the German spirit endured. People in both East and West dreamed of unity, not empire, but home. Music became a rebellion. Art became resistance. Words like Freiheit, freedom, whispered quietly in living rooms, grew louder in the streets. The Cold War turned Germany into the world's front line, a battlefield of ideology without bombs. But while superpowers clashed above them, ordinary Germans began to build something far greater: a new moral foundation. By the 1950s and 60s, West Germany rose from the ashes with astonishing speed. The Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle, transformed rubble into skyscrapers, poverty into prosperity. German engineers, scientists, and artists rebuilt the country not with pride but with purpose. Cars from Volkswagen, music from Kraftwerk, philosophy from Habermas, A new Germany was being born. A Germany that chose reason over rage, creation over conquest. In East Germany, however, hope struggled under oppression. Yet the desire for freedom never died. It lived in poems, in secret meetings, in quiet prayers. And then in 1989, the world witnessed a miracle. Crowds gathered in Berlin, chanting, shouting, crying. People climbed the wall, not in war, but in peace. Guards, unsure what to do, simply stepped aside. And then with hammers and bare hands, they began to tear the wall down. Piece by piece, stone by stone, the division of 40 years crumbled before the eyes of the world. East and West embraced as one. Strangers hugged, families reunited, the air filled with tears and laughter. Germany was whole again. But this time, its strength came not from conquest, but from compassion, from responsibility, from the courage to face its own past. Reunified Germany became a beacon of democracy and human rights. It taught the world that redemption is possible, that even the darkest history can lead to the brightest future, if a nation chooses truth over denial. Today, Germany stands as one of the most influential countries in the world, not through fear, but through respect. Its people lead in science, art, and diplomacy. Berlin, once divided by hate, now symbolizes unity, culture, and resilience. But beneath every triumph lies remembrance. Germany never forgets its ghosts. Memorials rise where the walls once stood. Stones mark the names of Holocaust victims on the streets where they once lived. School children visit concentration camps, not as punishment, but as education, because Germany knows that forgetting is the first step to repeating. From ashes, it built not an empire, but an example. The story of Germany is no longer one of domination. It is one of redemption, proof that even the darkest night can give birth to a dawn. History does not vanish. It whispers, through the ruins, through the songs, through the memories of those who survived. Germany's journey from chaos to conscience is more than a national story. It is a human one. Once, it was a land that conquered with fear. Now it conquers with knowledge, art, and empathy. Once it silenced the world with violence. Now it speaks for peace. Every monument, every memorial, every child learning the truth. They all say the same thing: we remember, we change, we rise again. Germany teaches us that redemption is not the act of forgetting, but the courage to remember, to face the mirror of history and never look away. So, as this story ends, ask yourself, if a nation can rebuild its soul from ashes, what could we rebuild within ourselves? If you believe in hope after darkness, if you believe that humanity deserves second chances, then subscribe and stand with every story that reminds us who we are. Because history is not the past, it's the mirror of our tomorrow.